morning. Good morning and welcome to the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Bonnie Rose, and it's great to see all of you here this morning. Let's start our Sunday. Let's start our Sunday by standing up and singing together. This is our congregational song, which is on your left side of your program, Amazing Grace. As we breathe in and breathe out and become still with each breath. As we relax and listen to the words of our sacred reading.
2 Breaths by Mark Nepo. At a gathering in San Francisco, I met Marco, a careful and patient photographer from Santa Clara. When asked what surprised him during the last year, his voice began to quiver. He'd witnessed 2 breaths that had changed his life. His daughter's first breath, then his mother's last breath. As his daughter inhaled the world, it seemed to awaken her soul on earth. As his mother exhaled her years, it seemed to free her soul of the world. These 2 breaths jarred Marco to live more openly and honestly. He took these 2 breaths into his own daily breathing and quickly saw their common presence in everyone's breathing. Is it possible that with each inhalation, we take in the world and awaken our soul? And with each exhalation, do we free ourselves of the world, which inevitably entangles us? Is this how we fill up and empty 100 times a day, always seeking the gift of the 2 breaths? Perhaps this is the work of being.
And so let us together do the work of being, focusing on our breathing, focusing on filling and emptying, and filling and emptying. Knowing that the breath is a gift from God, let us allow it to anchor ourselves in the presence and the knowing of the I Am that has its perfect life within us. As we sing together, I am remembering. In this beautiful silence, we remember. We remember our heart, our life, our being. And let us bring this remembrance into our open-eyed state as we breathe in deeply. And then exhale, gently opening our eyes, loving what is as it is, and so it is.
With this breath, I thee wed, my true nature, my forever, my being. With this breath, I say yes, and I embrace that which is real within me. And my being, and with this breath, I say and
That was graceful, wasn't it? Yeah. Boy, you know, I've heard that song so many times. I have played on my iPod all the time, and something about the way you just sang that, just got me. Thank you so much. Thank you. Of course, we have not only our beautiful soloist to thank, but our beautiful band as well. It's so wonderful. So I'm going to start this talk this morning by telling you a story of the past. And this was a story when I lived in New York back in the 80s, when I was a young nurse opera singer with big shoulder pads and bigger hair. Again, a survey. How many of you had big hair in the 80s? Oh, Todd, too. Okay, good. Evidently Fred as well. That's right. Let's have another show of hands. Put your hands around your head to show us just how big your hair really was. Oh, look at Fred. Fred, will you stand up and show us how big your hair was? Wow. I think the balcony mixed it, so you'll have to go up there and give them a special show later on, okay? Fred's big hair. Anyway, so I was a nurse, and I was working at being an opera singer as well, and I was working in a psychiatric hospital at the time. And when I worked there, I met this woman that I just love. Her name was Debbie, and she was a nurse's aide, and I was a nurse. And in the middle of our time together at the psychiatric hospital, Debbie decided that she wanted to change careers. She decided that she wanted to be a teacher, so she went and got a graduate degree in teaching elementary school, and then she got a job teaching kindergarten. And I was so proud of her because it was her dream come true. She really wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. And so after her first day of kindergarten, I said I would take her out to dinner. And we went out to dinner, and we went to a beautiful restaurant on the Upper West Side of New York, and we sat there eating our meal, and I asked her, what was the best thing that happened today? And she said, well, evidently in kindergarten, every single day, the students get a word for the day, and they get the news for the day. And I said, well, I want in on that. What's the word for the day? What's the news for the day? And she said, well, the word for today is welcome. And the news is, this is kindergarten. That story still makes me smile. It happened 25 years ago, and I still love the idea that this is kindergarten. Something so blissfully simple about that. It's kind of like my talk title, which is, For Best Results, Breathe Deeply. I got this piece of spiritual wisdom from the back of a lotion bottle. It was a bottle of Bath & Body Works eucalyptus tea tree oil aromatherapy for stress relief that our nodding board president gave me last year for Christmas. And one day I just was minding my own business, and I picked up the bottle and I read the back, and it said, for best results, breathe deeply. So of course I took the bottle and sniffed it. But then I thought, that is some pretty darn good advice, you know, not only in regards to the aromatherapy lotion, but just as a manifesto for life. For best results, breathe deeply. I think that probably solves a wealth of issues for us if we're willing to just simply breathe deeply. And then I thought, well, you know, I'll write a talk about it. And as soon as I decided to write a talk about it, that's when the voice of doubt started coming in, saying, they don't want to hear about breathing. They all know how to breathe. They don't need to be reminded to breathe deeply. You know, every Sunday I show up here and I want to give you that one amazing spiritual principle that will fix your entire life, that will restore your relationships and fix your finances and bring back your health and vitality and floss your teeth and change your tires and cook the Thanksgiving dinner. That's what I want to give you. And yet, the idea for best results, breathe deeply, followed me around, and it wouldn't leave me alone. So here I am. And it occurs to me that maybe it is really good advice, because maybe that bottle knew something that I didn't know, and maybe this indeed is kindergarten. The planet Earth is a schoolroom where we get to learn to relax and trust and let go and share our milk and cookies. And maybe all of those things that I listed, the finances that need fixing, the relationships that need mending, the health that needs to be restored, the teeth that need to be flossed, maybe all of those things start with the willingness to achieve those best results by breathing deeply. One of the reasons I'm so fascinated by the breath is that it really is a miracle. It's an amazing miracle. In fact, let's consciously breathe right now. I'm going to show you something that I learned from Rachel Remen when I was up at her seminar a few weeks ago. And she invited us to breathe in deeply. Let's do that, breathe in deeply. And then exhale. And at the end of the exhale, relax completely. And let's do it again. Breathe in deeply. And then exhale. And at the end of the exhale, relax completely. And because I love 3, let's do it one more time. Breathe in again. And then exhale. And at the end of the exhale, relax completely. It seems that there's almost nothing to say after that, because you feel better, don't you? Yes. Yes, so much of the time we run around holding our breath. And really, this idea that we can always do that breathing practice, it's always with us. We can do it no matter what we're doing. And the other thing that I love about the breath is that we just breathed 3 times and we invoked over 1 million tiny little miracles in our physical body. My nephew is a professional voice coach, and he works in New York, and he writes for Backstage Magazine, and he is really an expert on the breath, and he could stand up here and talk to you for hours about the physiology and the anatomy of breathing. Well, fortunately, I'm sparing you all of that. But I do know that the process of breathing is a miraculous process. And what I've learned from my nephew, and what I've learned as a singer, and what I learned from studying physiology as a nurse, just kind of the overview, is that your diaphragm muscle contracts and goes down, and your intercostal muscles between your ribs expand your ribs, and that creates a vacuum, and the air rushes in. And when the air rushes in, there is this amazing dance at the molecular level between the oxygen and the carbon dioxide and the hemoglobin in the blood, and the oxygenated blood gets pumped around the body by the heart, and the waste product, the carbon dioxide, goes out into the world where it does good work there as well, and also does good work in our bodies. And I thought about this. Each of those processes, those are kind of the mega processes, the contraction of the muscles and the nerve stimulation that is required to breathe, and the exchange of nutrients and oxygen and carbon dioxide. All of those are the overarching processes, but within those processes, there are millions and millions of little tiny cellular processes that have to happen. And then I did the math. I thought about how many times we breathe in a day. So let's say a normal respiratory rate between 15 and 20. How many minutes are in a day? 1,440. How does that song go? 400 minutes. Whatever. No, I think it's 1,440 minutes are in a day. And I multiplied that by the number of breaths in a minute, and it's somewhere between 20,000 and 28,000 breaths in a day. You multiply that by several million miracles that happen each time we breathe, and just take that in. This miracle is always happening through us, to us, always, every single time we take a breath. Do you have any doubt that there's a God that set this up, that created this magnificence? And it's so ordinary and so natural to us that we take it for granted so much of the time. But this miracle is happening in us right here and right now. And as we cultivate the consciousness of miracle, we can move out of our bodies and see even greater miracles around us and happening through us all over the planet Earth and the universe. It's an amazing thing that we have here in this kindergarten schoolroom called life. It is a huge miracle. The breath is a huge miracle. And it makes me wonder why we tend to hold our breath. Anybody ever notice themselves doing that? Holding your breath, not breathing fully, not breathing deeply? Well, this leads me to another thing that I discovered a couple of weeks ago when I was doing research for a class. I was reading something on the internet, and it asked the question, what is the most prolific phrase in the Bible? Which phrase happens the most in the Bible? And I'm like, ooh, God is going to kick your booty? No, that's from South Park. But actually, they use a different word than booty, but I'm trying to cut back on that use of that word. But anyway, what this author said, that the most prolific phrase in the Bible is some variation of the words, do not be afraid. It happens over 350 times in the Bible that someone says something like, do not be afraid. You know, the ones that spring to my mind are when the shepherds appear, or when the angels appear to the shepherds and they say, fear not, for behold, I bring you glad tidings of great joy. Or when Jesus says, let not your hearts be troubled. Do not be afraid is the most prolific message in the Bible. And I wondered, well, why is that? You know, couldn't they just write it down once and call it a day? You know, why do we have to hear it so many times? It seems that it's part of the way that we're made, that we are fully divine, but we are also fully human. And with this human instrument that we carry with us always, that has this miracle of breath going through us all of the time, there is this tendency to be afraid. Fear follows us around. Our friend fear follows us around. And notice I called fear our friend. It's not our enemy, it's our friend, because fear can sometimes warn us of danger. And if we are manufacturing fear by naming things that are not necessarily going to hurt us, if we're naming them stressful, stress is much of the time manufactured fear, then fear is also our friend in that, because we can use fear as an invitation to move into greater self-knowing and greater self-acceptance and greater understanding of our place in this beautiful, amazing universe called the planet Earth. One of the best ways to allow fear to be our friend, if we're having fear related to stress, is to get very clear about what we are actually afraid of. Instead of just holding our breath and feeling the fear, we get very clear about what is the source of that fear. You know, certainly, as a minister, I talk to a lot of people who are afraid, and I see my own life and my loved ones that are not involved in ministry, and I see that a lot of people are sometimes afraid of for their physical safety. But I'd say even more than that, most of the fear that I encounter is related to stress. Is related to the stress of simply having way too much to do and not enough time to do it, and being spread way too thin. Being spread way too thin in this miraculous universe that offers us so much. You know, and there's all that expectation that we have to be perfect, that we have to do it right, that we have to be the best father, mother, son, daughter, employee, employer, housekeeper, cook, dog walker, all of those things tug at us incessantly. And there is this nagging fear that goes with that tells us that somehow we are not enough. Because that really, if we look at the fear behind the fear, that's really what it's about. This idea that we are spread too thin, that we have too much to do and not enough time to do it in, that really activates that belief in scarcity, doesn't it? It activates that idea that there is not enough time, there are not enough resources, and that I am not enough to get it all done. I am somehow inadequate. I can't get it all done. I hate to sound like I keep affirming that, but that's what we continue to affirm in our heads over and over again. And even with the world of modern conveniences, you know, the cell phone, have you ever noticed that cell phones are wonderful, but they can also be very stress-inducing. I remember I caught myself driving on the freeway with my hands gripping the steering wheel thinking, I haven't charged my cell phone, you know? Not realizing that for 45 years or so, I did just fine without a cell phone before they were invented, right? You know, and the internet is so wonderful, it connects us, but also it means that people across the nation can jump into our consciousness and jump into our lives, and sometimes we don't want everybody in our consciousness, right? Right? Okay. So there is a lot of stress, and we make it worse by holding on, and we also make it worse by not identifying what it is. It really is about this idea of scarcity, this idea that there is not enough time, there are not enough resources, and there is not enough of me to go around. Now, there's a very interesting thing that happens when we take the breath. I'm going to take a little leap here, so stick with me, and then we'll get back to the breathing. I'm currently reading a book by Walter Stark, who was one of Joel Goldsmith's right-hand men. And Walter Stark passed away recently, but he wrote a book that I'm teaching next January, called It's All God, the Flowers, and the Fertilizer. So, as you may imagine, that is just really my cup of tea. It's about non-duality, and it's recognizing that we need to embrace our fully human parts as well as our fully divine parts, okay? Okay, I just had a dirty thought, but I'm not going to say it. It has to do with embrace your human parts right now. No, okay. Anyway, all right, I did say it. So, anyway, changing the subject. So, Walter Stark talks about how Jesus was a great reformer. You know, Jesus was not a Christian, right? You know that, right? Jesus was not the first Christian. He was a Jewish teacher, a rabbi that came and reformed some of Judaism. And one of the brilliant things that he did was he encapsulated Jewish law into two major commandments, two basic commandments: love God and love your neighbor. And that is an embrace of non-duality. Because it is one thing to love the idea of God and to have that idea in your head and to think lofty thoughts. But if we have to actually love our neighbor too, that makes that word become flesh and it dwells among us. If we get to actually love our neighbor, that affirms the theoretical notion that God is love and that we love God. Does that make sense? So the thing with breathing is that breathing, if we allow ourselves to breathe deeply, it is if we are affirming this idea that we talk about in this church, that the universe is good and that we are basically safe here and that we can trust God. Those are all beautiful theories, but when we actually take a deep breath, we inhale, we exhale, and we relax at the bottom of the exhale. That is a literal embodiment of the theory that we can trust. You get that? You get how profound that is? You get how profound I am? You get how wise I am in this moment? It's so simple that it's hard to explain. You know, it's so simple. Every time we take a deep breath, it is as if we are saying, I am willing to let go and trust God. We are enacting that. We are making it real. We are living the principle fully, and the word becomes flesh and dwells within us. Let's do that again. For best results, breathe in, and then exhale, and gently let go. And what if every time you did that, every time you breathed in and breathed out fully and then relaxed at the bottom of the breath, what if you recognized that that is the way of saying, God's grace is sufficient, I am sufficient, there is enough time, there are enough resources, I may not see the answer right now, but I know that God knows, all is well, I am enough. Can you imagine all of that encapsulated into a little tiny thing that we take for granted called the breath? It's true. It's there. All we have to do is actually do it, which is easier said than done. These past couple of weeks have been quite busy, perhaps, for many of us. You know, I think a lot of us have big lives and big jobs and families and obligations. These weeks for me have been particularly busy because of the holidays coming up, Thanksgiving and Christmas, and you know, we have a lot of hoopla here at the church at Christmas. And to top it all off, as I mentioned, we're getting ready to paint our building. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, because I have so much wonderful support around me all the time. Beautiful board members, beautiful building committee members. I don't know where they are right now, but I saw one over there a minute ago. Just wonderful support around me all of the time. And all of the people on the building committee and the board have big lives. So they are working, they have children, they have pets, they have many obligations, and they have the responsibility of the church and the building. They do so much more than I do, it's amazing. But sometimes when things are coming to a head, like they were with the painting, we needed to make a lot of decisions, and we needed to work on the financing, and we needed to get a lot of stuff ducks in a row, and the timing was very crucial. I had to take a lot of that on. So I was working on that, I was working on Christmas, I was working on trying to eat right and floss my teeth and service my car and go to the doctor when I'm supposed to and take care of my dogs, give my dogs a 3 to 6 mile hike every day or so, which makes their life much better, and trying to keep my house clean, trying to do something about the cloud of dog hair that is always engulfing my house. All of that, and it was starting to feel stressful and starting to feel out of control. So I said to myself, you know, Bon, what's one thing you can do that'll give you a sense of well-being, a sense of control? And I said, you know what? My bedspread's getting a little old. I'm going to buy a new bedspread. And so I did. I ordered this nice bedspread online. I got it. I put it on the bed. I went out to teach a class. I came back. You know I have a puppy. And Saraswati had chewed a dog-sized hole. Big enough for her head to fit through. So now, basically, I no longer had a bedspread, I had a poncho. And yeah. So, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty, but I was kind of formulating the ideas for this talk, and I'm just like, well, I don't want to lie to the congregation. I don't want to say that the breath can help everything. So can the breath help this situation with the bedspread that's turned into a freaking poncho? So I decided to sit on the offensive bedspread and just breathe deeply for a while. And sure enough, I did. And then I remembered that having a puppy is one of the sweetest things in the world. And even when they're naughty, it goes so fast. It goes so fast, and our dogs are not with us for very long, are they? And then I started thinking about the building. My relationship with this building changed when I started calling her Grandma. The building was last painted in the 1970s, I think. I'm not quite sure of that. And so the paint job, we're talking about the outside, the paint job is a huge job, and it's long overdue. 10 years or so, a little more than 10 years, when I first walked into this church, it was kind of like, there's the bathroom, there's your office, and the building needs painting. Had I known, I was so naive about being a minister, had I known that the building needed painting, I may not have shown up here. I may have said no to the job because it seemed epic. That was 10 years ago. And so I started thinking about all of that fondly, and all of the memories, and all that's happened in these last 10 years, and on this beautiful congregation that we've built together. You know, when the paper asked me for quotes about what's so special about your church, I was like, the congregation, and the congregation, the way that we relate to each other. And we've accomplished a lot, but really this is the greatest accomplishment. And then I started thinking about the congregation in terms of the paint job and how it's happening now. It really is going to happen, right, Lonnie? It's really going to happen. We're really going to get Grandma's facelift. I'm so excited. And then it occurred to me that we are the people who are getting it done. This is the congregation with the heart and the vision and the resources and the time and the goodness to take care of our beloved Grandma, to take care of this beautiful historic landmark that is a beacon for so many people and that offers so many services, not only on Sundays, but all of the 12-step groups and all of the community groups that we host here in this beautiful center. You are the people to get it done. And isn't that a greater thought, a more attractive thought, a more loving thought, a more beautiful thought than, oh, I'm so stressed. No. It's we are the people that can get this done. And the beautiful thing about this is that I did not have to read it in a book. I did not have to see a self-help guru. I did not have to do anything like take a seminar. All I did was sit there and breathe, and I had a custom-made tiny piece of wisdom that helped me so much. So whatever it is that you are going through, whatever stretches you or stresses you, it is my humble recommendation to breathe in and exhale. And at the bottom of the exhale, relax. And do that several times. And if you do that, wisdom will come. And you will move from holding to beholding. From holding to beholding the miracle of your life and the miracle of the next right thing and the miracle of the wisdom that is always available to us. Always available to us. There are some that still may be skeptical. You know, well, the breath worked for her in that dog poncho and for the church, but what about me? My life is really hard. Or what about the problems in the world? Can my breathing deeply help people around the globe? There is a story told by Mark Nepo in one of his books. And it's a story about the classical guitarist Andres Segovia. You've probably heard of him. He really put classical guitar on the map, and he was a renowned guitarist. And the story goes that he was playing a concert in Berlin, and all of a sudden a loud crack emanated from his guitar, and his guitar had cracked, and he ran off the stage cradling his beloved instrument and saying over and over again, "Oh, my guitar, my guitar, my guitar." And shortly thereafter, he learned that the craftsman who made his guitar all the way in Madrid had passed away. We are all connected. My breath is your breath. Your breath is my breath. And when I breathe deeply, I affirm for me and for you that all is well and that God is in the house. When you breathe deeply, you affirm for me and for all of the world that life is good and that everything is unfolding perfectly. So let us practice that as much as we possibly can. Let us use our stress or our anxiety or anything that causes us to hold our breath or fight or flee. Let us use that as the miracle that it is, something to inspire us, something to help us recognize when we are holding on, and then move from holding to beholding as we breathe in deeply and then exhale and gently let go. For best results, breathe deeply. Let us pray. All right, so here we are. Here we all are in this beautiful, beautiful sanctuary, in this beautiful church, with all of these beautiful hearts and minds that have been opened through our spiritual work together. And I just breathe into the knowing of this. I breathe into the center of this and allow this to be exactly what it is. The fullness of humanity, the fullness of divinity, the fullness of everything encapsulated in this one glorious moment called now. Here in this moment, I recognize that there truly is only one life, and that life is God's life, and that life is the life of all of us. That perfect life is wholeness, it is peace, It is abundance, it is joy, it is wonder, it is love, it is that, and so much more. It is the life that embraces all opposites, the seeming opposites of human and divine, the seeming opposites of darkness and light. It is the life that lives through us, that leads us into ever-expanding ways. And so I unify with that life right now, and I unify with this entire congregation, knowing that as I speak in the first person, I am using the I am presence, that the I am is who we all are. And so from this place of unification, I know I am safe. I am whole. I am willing to surrender. I am willing to breathe deeply. I am willing to affirm through my breath that God is present and that God is that essence of goodness, of eternal goodness, that wholeness that I can trust always. I am willing to affirm with my breath that all is well. I am willing with my breath to move out of my history into the mystery of goodness, into the mystery of grace that is sufficient unto all of us. I move from any perception of insufficiency and begin to know all sufficiency, for I am all sufficient. And with this work, I know that many avenues of health and healing and hope open up for all of us, that help arrives when we need it, that grace is always present and omnipresent and seen, that grace and love and peace and joy are the order of our days. And so I am just so grateful for this beauty, so grateful for this breath, so grateful for this life of God that connects all of us, so grateful for this universe and what is ever beyond the universe. I am grateful for the demonstrations of this truth that I know will enhance and bless people's lives as they move into breathing deeply and recognizing the presence of God and trusting that presence in everything. I bless this spiritual center and every single person here today. I bless all of us. And I bless this teaching and all of the wisdom that it offers to us, as I bless all paths to God, churches, temples, mosques, and ashrams. I bless fundamentalists and atheists. I bless everyone, for everyone is a blessing. And with a heart so filled with blessedness and so filled with gratitude and so filled with love, I say, thank you, Spirit, thank you, God, and I release these words into the mystery, and together we say, and so it is.
Okay, we're going to breathe into this one, right? Sounds better when you sing if you're breathing. It's a good thing. Think of your fellow man, lend him a helping hand. Put a little love in your heart and breathe. I think it's getting late, so please don't hesitate. Put a little love in your heart, and the world will be a better place, and the world will be a better place for you and me. Just wait and see. Take a good look around. If you're looking down, put a little love in your heart. I know when you decide kindness will be your guide. Put a little love in your heart.